Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm here with Nick Bettles, commercial manager for Virgin Atlantic here in Israel. Before that, Nick has opened up a number of hubs for Virgin Atlantic in different countries. So he definitely has some experience kind of hopping from country to country and exploring new cultures. Nick, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Hi David. Good to speak to you again. As David said, I'm the commercial manager for Virgin Atlantic here in Israel. Based in Israel, live in Tel Aviv, and have done so now for pretty much nearly a year. But with COVID, I've spent a little bit of time back home. I got stuck back there right at the very beginning. So I had about a 4 month hiatus and now very much back. So I live in Tel Aviv. I live in Neve Tzedek. So for those of you who know the area, very lovely place to be. Very French, so it's very apt for cultural diversity because there isn't a lot of English people around Neve Tzedek. It's a very French area.
Okay, very nice. And so you represent Virgin Atlantic here in Israel. Personally, I love the airline. I think that the Virgin Group is very innovative. I love how they're kind of always looking for new technologies and adapting things and doing things differently. Mr. Richard Branson's always been one of the people I look up to on the entrepreneurial spirit. Do you want to tell us a few words about the airline itself, about kind of the Virgin mission and?
Yeah, so look, first of all, I think it's very important to say that we are coming back to Israel. I know that there's a lot of uncertainty. You and everyone else has seen a huge amount of uncertainty around Virgin Atlantic and about the future of us post-COVID and everything like that. And I can absolutely say confidently we are back, and we are certainly back in Israel. So we've had confirmation that 100% we will be flying back to Tel Aviv on the 6th of September, which is amazing for us. We'll be flying back 3 times a week. But really, I mean, our history over here started back in the end of 2018 to the beginning of 2019. That's kind of, even before then, there was a lot of discussions around new routes, and I'm sure I can tell you a little bit about that later. But really, that's how long it takes to start up an operation. It's usually around a year or so in advance. And at the beginning of 2019, we obviously made the announcement that we were coming to Israel, and then there was a phased ramp up to when we were starting, and then we started in September. We had 4 amazing months over here with some incredible support from the Israelis, from people from the UK that were coming over to Israel, and actually from a lot of people in the States as well. So using London as that connection point to come back and forth between the States and Israel. 4 great months, and then unfortunately we had to stop because of COVID. Israel was one of the first destinations actually to go offline for Virgin Atlantic. We stopped flying pretty much mid-March. We know that Israel was unfortunately hit by the corona crisis very early on, and actually it was the fastest market to really adopt to the changes of corona after Shanghai and China and Hong Kong and some of the other Asian destinations that we fly to. It was really the first hit. So we came out in March and we're back in September. So there's been a fairly big gap in between, but we've been doing a lot of work to make sure that when we do come back, we're absolutely bigger, better, and stronger than we were before.
Right. I assume it's definitely hard to kind of, you spend those first few months building some traction and then having to stop, all of a sudden, and then for taking a break. I'm sure that's been tough.
Yeah, it's, to be honest with you, it feels like, and I'm sure that for a lot of businesses and certainly within the travel industry, it kind of feels like we're starting again because there's been such a long gap between when we were flying and now today when we're kind of almost relaunching the route. It feels like we're starting again. There's a lot of things that we have to do to get back and ready for operations, but also in the mindset of the Israeli consumer. There's a lot of doubt out there at the moment about, can I fly? If I can fly, what restrictions are there? What happens when I get to the other country? What happens when I come back? And there's a lot of ambiguity because there's no set one way that countries or bilateral relations between countries is actually adopting. So because of that, there's a lot of thought around, okay, can I go, can I not go? And the good news is that the decision that the Israeli government made on last Thursday, so over the weekend, meant that Israelis now coming back from the UK into Israel now don't have to have quarantine. So 14 days, no quarantine anymore for non-Israelis coming back, which is wonderful from the UK, as it's a green country. And that was really our go button, really, to move forward with the flight. So that release is fantastic. And we're very much looking forward to more developments on that coming from the Israeli government, really opening up the skies even further.
Right. Cool. Very nice. And so let's go back to the beginning a little bit. You said this has been about a 2-year in the process, making the process. I guess that's like a little bit after we first met. I guess the plan started kind of moving towards that. Yeah. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how does a corporate even look at this move? I'm assuming it's not just one day, hey, Nick, get on a plane to Israel. Going.
No, I think there's a little bit more science that goes into it. I won't do the network team too much disservice. But no, for a normal corporate, I think that when you set up an enterprise in a different country, there's probably a lot that goes through it. But we're effectively a commercial organization that looks at demand between 2 points. Our home is in London. We've always been based in the UK. 80% of our operations actually fly to the States. So our home is very much the UK, but where we traditionally fly to is all the way to most big destinations really in the States. So our move to Tel Aviv was not unusual because airlines operate new markets all the time. But for us, it was definitely a first. And Tel Aviv was actually the first new market that we've put online for about 10 years that wasn't in the States. So it was a big move for the company to kind of go into, and there's a number of things that kind of go into the decision making, and factoring in on a big matrix. Is this the right place to go to? Anything from the demand that's in both points, usually in Israel point of sale, and in the UK, how many people really want to go back and forth between the two. The level of competition. So what existing carriers are on there? Is there a strong home market carrier? Is there a lot of foreign carriers? What does the low-cost carrier situation look like? The aircraft availability. So we actually operate a long-haul only operation. We actually don't have narrow-bodied aircraft. We're solely long-haul, and Israel's our shortest destination by quite a long way, actually. So 4.5 hours is unusual for us. But the aircraft that we had, we felt that it could make it work. And then you throw in there alongside that our existing schedule. So where can we connect through to? I mentioned earlier a lot between the States and Israel. We know that there's a lot of demand for Israelis in the States, and both Israelis over here that want to go back and forth. So that was absolutely consideration. And then the demographics. So for us, Virgin Atlantic are very much seen as a leisure carrier. We fly a lot to the Caribbean from the UK, some fantastic places, by the way, which now, because of our shift to Heathrow, means that we were able actually now to connect Israelis to places like Antigua, St. Lucia, Barbados, Tobago, Grenada. Amazing places. You should definitely go. They're beautiful. So you throw. Are we a leisure carrier? But how important is the business mix here? And business travel for us is so important. So you kind of look at that demographic of what that traveler could look like, and really throw that all in, and you've got a limited list of destinations that you can fly to. So when we decided on Tel Aviv back in end of 2018, beginning of 2019, it was shortlisted, and the numbers made sense. And we recognized that Israel pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID is just a fast flying destination. Israelis have an absolute passion for traveling, unlike I've ever seen before. I think some of the numbers that were bandied around beforehand were that Israelis travel internationally, obviously, outside of their own borders, up to 3 times a year, an average 3 times a year. That for most countries is not even close. You know, you're talking about maybe on average, maybe one trip a year abroad, maybe a little bit more, but certainly not up to that level. So we know Israelis love to travel. They love to go to somewhere new, and they love to try something new. So all of that made Israel a fantastic destination for us to fly to. Previous to it, we were offline, which meant that we were using partner carriers to really work with the travel agency community to connect Israel to our network and then beyond. But having our own service obviously makes a huge difference, and to bring the brand to Israel is fantastic. So we now we actually work with a company called APG, which is part of the MAM organization. And when that decision-making kind of went through the process, we wanted to work with someone like APG MAM because they were able to really help us integrate quickly, and more quicker actually, into the local market. It almost provides like that kind of soft landing. So right the way from the decision-making around where we should fly to how we start flying, we build in a huge amount of factors and then identify the right partner from which to work with.
Right. And when you say the partners were actually the ones flying. You were seeing people, flying from Tel Aviv to London, and then from there connecting Virgin flights to around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of our strategies is, and it's everybody from Virgin Atlantic will talk to you about it. We absolutely believe in working with the right partners. Partners to us can be anyone from APG MAM, who help us with the general day-to-day commercial operation function. That they're absolutely a partner. But our partners are also the corporates, the SMEs, the entrepreneurs, the people that want to connect with our brand. We truly believe in that kind of reciprocal relationship whereby they're using us for travel, absolutely. But how can we work together to improve their business experience and also their travel experience when they're going to the UK and beyond?
Right. Now, when you decided on Israel as the hub to approach, I know you said that Virgin is seen mostly as a leisure airline. Were you looking more? Did you see more potential with a leisure travel or with a business community here?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, in terms of the leisure travel, we see Israel and have seen Israel as the mix has been predominantly leisure, or what we call VFR, so visiting friends and relatives. The majority of our travelers have absolutely been from that demographic initially. We know that there's a lot of Israelis in the UK that come back and forth, and that's fantastic. We absolutely want to appeal to them to use us to come back to Israel and vice versa. The business mix, though, has been more interesting. It's a much more slower burn. So when we talk about from a sales perspective, to work with the right people in the corporate community and within the business travel community takes a lot longer to kind of filter through. There's agreements that you often need to work with. There's partnerships that you need to build, not from a single contract. It often takes a long time to kind of work through. And probably one of the biggest drivers in business travel as opposed to leisure travel is around the corporate program, the corporate loyalty program. Getting people that are traditionally flying with other carriers and attracting them over to us. And again, that's much more of a longer process than simply looking at maybe price, which a lot of leisure travelers and those VFR travelers that I was talking about earlier are much more led by. We feel that price is key for them, whereas loyalty and the value of really traveling with an airline, and certainly in the upper cabins, is much more important for the corporate traveler. So the mix has been swayed towards the leisure traveler, but we're absolutely looking to really target that business travel as we start back.
Right. So I'm assuming the business travel, like you touched on, is very relationship based. It's not just we have Virgin and they're offering us a good package or whatever, but I'm sure there's touching bases with HR, staying on top of the relationship, the personal relationship, phone calls and just being in touch. How would you compare the Israeli business environment to other places that you've represented Virgin in terms of
It's a great question. So I think that when we look at the relationships that we have with the people here in Israel is, you've got a lot of fantastic pent-up business. We work with a lot of global partners from the UK and from the States, like so Google, Amazon, Facebook, the real big names, certainly within the technology environment. And when we look at being able to support their program over here in Israel, the question is really driven from their central procurement standpoint. So in terms of building the relationships with our global suppliers down here, it's about finding the right connections, making sure that we are globally aligned with how we work with that organization, because there's often a lot more that sits around their procurement process, how they decide which airlines they fly to, what value the particular airline or the alliance can really give to them. The question comes down to much more than the local relationship. It's much more about where they stand globally with us.
Yeah.
When, however, we look at the local corporates, and we've done extremely well, and we've got some fantastic partners locally that are headquartered down here in Israel, be it Tel Aviv, or in Haifa, Jerusalem. We've been very lucky to really work with a number now of local corporates. And there it's all about just demonstrating the value. So we at Virgin absolutely believe that we have the best experience that goes across to London. And we know that when our travelers travel with us, they love us, which is great. The majority, I can't say all. We're not for everyone, and I fully appreciate that. But we're very lucky that we have some great results on Tel Aviv. And actually, just a small anecdote is we run a review score on every single flight that we take. So every single flight that's operated by Virgin Atlantic, there is a text message that comes out afterwards. It measures NPS, which is Net Promoter Score. And that text message basically values the customer's experience, takes it all back, aggregates it out, and gives you a score for the flight. And we found that up until those 4 months that we were flying, Tel Aviv appeared in the top 5 faster than any other route, because obviously it was brand new. And actually we were topping the global network of our customer recommendation of would they choose to fly with Virgin Atlantic again, or would they recommend us to a friend. We were topping that score on Tel Aviv, and specifically the London to Tel Aviv sector. So it was great for us, and it went that we knew that our travellers were loving the experience on board. And that's the value that we kind of take to the customer here.
Yeah. So would you say the flights Tel Aviv to London are better than the other Virgin flights, or the Tel Aviv passengers are just easier to please?
I think that did you say easily pleased?
Are more easy to please.
I don't think any Israeli is very easily pleased. I can come on to some of that later, but I think you've got to work hard to secure the love of an Israeli. So I definitely wouldn't say the latter, but I would definitely say that what we've done on the route is certainly upped the passenger experience. Certainly, if you look at the comparison to the low-cost carriers, which absolutely have a place in the market, if you're looking for price competitiveness, and that's the most important thing for you, the low-cost carriers is where you should look. But if you're looking for the experience, and if you're looking for something a little bit different, absolutely. I think that what we've brought on the route with the premium economy product that we've got, which is wonderful, with the upper class product with the bar on board, I think we're the first airline to bring a bar to Israel, and I know from speaking to some passengers around it, very happy passengers with a couple of drinks in hand. They were laughing.
Yeah. All right. So now tell us about the process of you coming to Israel. Coming from an airline to Israel, you get on the plane, come here, and shock, something you expected. How is the experience?
Yeah, well, personally, I'm English, right? So this place is bloody hot. That's the first thing I notice when I get off the plane, usually. Certainly in August, I started coming over here kind of May last year, but really my family and I came over in August to kind of test the water and see where we were going to live. And the heat is not the same as home. So that's one thing definitely to get over pretty quick. But look, I mean, I've lived in the Middle East before. I've lived in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. That was actually hotter. That was upwards of 40 degrees, but it was a very dry heat. But I've done some work in Hong Kong as well for other airlines. I've also worked in Europe and in the States. And I think that when I think about Israel, the one thing that the one Hebrew word that springs to mind is balagan, because I think everything here is slightly chaotic to a certain extent. Certainly from what I'm used to from living in London and my time spent where I grew up and everything like that. It's chaotic, but it's always with a sense of order. And I'm every day I'm fascinated by doing simple things, anything from going to the supermarket here to setting up a new corporate contract. I'm always amazed by an Israeli's ability to work in such what is perceived chaos, and yet stuff still gets done. And sometimes the process from the chaos to something actually happening, there's so much blur in between that I'm often surprised by the thing that's happened has actually happened. So it's amazing. So I don't think I've ever really encountered a situation where stuff hasn't got done. It may have taken a little bit longer sometimes, but I'm never entirely sure about the path that we're taking to get to that end point. That's fascinating about Israel. And it's a funny way to look at it, right? But I think that there's a lot in there that kind of tells you about the Israeli way of working, which is fascinating. And the other thing I really admire about being over here in Israel is that people are very honest. The people are incredible. Israelis and the folk that live here in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, are very, very honest with you. My team that I work with, probably the most honest team that I've ever experienced, and so they're not afraid to tell me when they think I'm not going down the right direction, or if I'm doing something, or we're doing something that isn't the right thing. The absence of hierarchy, and I think the absence of being unafraid to talk to anybody from me all the way through to anyone in the organisation and say this is not the right thing to do. We should be doing something different. I absolutely admire. I think we as English people should absolutely adopt more of that in working in the UK for sure.
Yeah. So I understand most of your Israel team is Israelis.
Yes, they all are. Yeah. So it's only me. Who's English, and yeah, we have 6 others, so 7 including myself, all Israeli.
Cool. And how's the aside from the honesty, the culture gap between working with English and Israelis working together in an office together?
It's great. It's great. I think there's a lot of commonalities really between Israelis and British people. British people are known for their sense of sarcasm, and often sarcasm doesn't travel well. You go to the States, you'll find some people who can take it, but most of the places that I've been to and worked in, you add a little sarcasm and you get a weird kind of face back and not really understanding your point. Whereas here, I absolutely can be as sarcastic as as I like, and I think that it's great that the team get it, definitely.
Yeah. All right. So I'd met you when you came to Israel in the past. Before so I know you've been here a couple of times in the past and kind of seen and had a little bit of prep time. And I'm sure corporate also did some due diligence on their side to help prepare you for the market. I'm sure you got some professional industry reports and what you needed to kind of get the ball rolling here. Shai is CEO of Virgin, is Israeli himself, right?
What was that, sorry?
Shai, the CEO of Virgin?
Yes.
Himself, right?
He is Israeli, yes.
Did he give you any tips for coming?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So a lot of people actually say, is one of the reasons why you fly to Israel because Shai is Israeli? Can categorically say no is the answer to that question. That is not the reason why we fly here. Being Israeli, he's all about the numbers and making sure that it makes commercial sense and that this is the right thing to do. So certainly he verified it, but I think that's not the reason why we did it. But when I was fortunate enough to get the job and be moving over here, he said to me, there was one thing that really stood out. He said, look, when you speak to Israelis and you work with Israelis and do business with Israelis, an Israeli will always, and he kind of held up a kind of a pretend jacket, and he said, Israelis will always show you one deal, right? So one side of the deal will be in here, right? This is one deal. I got a deal for you. And then if you don't like that deal, don't worry about it. I've got this deal right here. This is the next deal that I've got for you. And it was a great way, I think, of really just kind of telling me. And I often think about that anecdote because it's a great way of saying that, look, there's a lot to working in Israel. There's many layers. Don't take what you see as face value, and don't be afraid to ask the question. And that's really the big lesson I think that I've got from that one, is that, you know, when you're working with Israelis, make sure that you really truly understand what their motivations are, what their business direction is, you know, how they're looking to adapt their business, and how really Virgin Atlantic as our organization can help them achieve their aims. Because, you know, this silly example of the two different things in two different pockets, two different deals, yeah, is absolutely true, you know, but you just need to ask the questions to discover what the true motivation is and find that. And I think that the other thing is as well is that, you know, Israelis are not afraid to put things in front of you. And that's absolutely an experience that I've had personally being over here, is that there are a number of people who absolutely have the best intentions. And I think that that come at it from the right way, but often for an English person or for someone that isn't used to the Israeli way of working, and you know, perhaps that can be described as bullish or very, you know, kind of proactive and very direct, and you know, a lot of the things that Israelis are known and loved for. But I think that when you're dealing with people that are not Israeli, that absolutely does need to be taken into consideration, because it may not be the way that you intended, but certainly the way that it comes across sometimes is extremely direct.
Yeah, right. And so when you came here, how do you kind of discover a culture in terms of how do you do business with them? I mean, there's books and there's research and all that stuff, but you really have to kind of get in there to learn how to deal with it. What steps do you take, or how do you start? Because you've done this a couple of times. Not just you mentioned Abu Dhabi and China and Israel and US. And how do you kind of step into that role and start to understand it?
Cool. So there's personally and professionally, I think that they're two different things. So yeah. Personally, very quickly, I absolutely discover a culture with food. My wife and I are really, really big foodies, and if there's one thing that Israel is, it's the most amazing place for food and drinking that I've pretty much ever been to. I really struggle to think if I found a bad meal over here, and everything I seem to eat is absolutely delicious. So my wife and I discover new places in Tel Aviv, and we go out and, you know, all through restaurants, all through bars, restaurants, and trying different things. And I think that when I convinced her to move over to Israel, my wife that is look, it's a great place. It's by the beach. It's got good weather. It's year-round sun. You're going to love it, but absolutely the food is phenomenal. So when we are looking at personal discovery, it's all about the food. Professionally, it's a little bit different. So professionally, I think that when we as a business in Virgin Atlantic, we want to understand a little bit more. And I think the lessons that I've really learned, kind of really what I was saying about with Shai earlier, is to ask the question and to listen. Because I think that one of the biggest challenges about working across cultures and working within different markets, different cultures, and different people is that you absolutely come with preconceptions. of what the place is going to be like, of how people are going to react, of how people are going to deal with you, and all of those sort of things. And those preconceptions need to be broken down, really, for you to understand truly what that culture is about. So the ability to ask the questions and just sit back and listen to somebody was absolutely key for me. So when I first came over here, we work a lot B2B. The big travel agency community over here is very important for us. And, we were able to identify the right people to speak to. And, approaching those meetings for somebody who had a very limited knowledge about Israel and the way that Israelis travel and the way that Israelis do business over here with airlines, with their customers. It was all about just asking the questions. And, I pretty much spent a good couple of months sitting down with people from all aspects of the travel industry and asking them, what makes this place tick? What makes an Israeli want to travel? What makes an Israeli decide on one travel agency over another, one airline over another, one destination over another? What are those motivations? So that was the best thing that I could have done, and that's what I tend to do when I travel to or live in different places, is to spend a bit of time just kind of understanding that I may have some preconceptions of the place, and just try and break those down as I kind of go along.
All right, cool. And so when you're saying try to break into the community and talking to the different B2B players, I know one of the first things Virgin did, I think it was part of your grand opening announcement or something. You also ran a startup competition for travel tech, something. Right? Was there something that Virgin was running an innovation contest?
When we very first started up, absolutely, alongside Calculist and all of those guys, we had a pitch to rich, it was called. Brilliant.
Yeah. So are you also in touch with the travel tech community here in Israel?
Yeah, so it's a great question actually, because I referenced earlier a bit about business travel and the importance of business travel for us and going forward. Look, for us in Virgin Atlantic, we absolutely want to win in the technology space. I recognize that Silicon Wadi, right, is what it's called. It's that's a common phrase for Israel, and we do very, very well in San Francisco with the tech companies in San Francisco. Technology at a global level is our biggest vertical. Technology out of San Francisco, out of Seattle, New York, Los Angeles, these destinations, we do extremely well within the technology space. We know that the travelers that are technology focused love to fly with Virgin. And really for me, being here in Israel, this is pretty much our single biggest opportunity to work with the ecosystem, the technology environment over here. And that's everyone from, your entrepreneur startup, single guy and girl doing their own thing that are looking for that next big solution, right the way through to startups as they kind of continue through the process, all the way up to like the VCs, the investors, and the programs, the accelerators that sit around it. Those are the companies that I believe will know the good things about Virgin Atlantic, and their travelers will want to travel on us because of the experience that they can get. For me, it's my number one business travel focus as we come back is all about technology.
Right. Well, I was talking more about kind of connecting with the travel tech startups themselves in terms of kind of innovation to bring into the Virgin Group, whether it's aircraft modifications or booking innovations or stuff like that. Are you still working? Are you actively working with the community?
So I wouldn't say we're being very honest. I don't think we're actively working there at the moment. I think that what we've recognized is that post-COVID, there's absolutely an opportunity, though, to bring technology within the business to support the changes that the airline are going through today, right? So you look at this kind of new normal that's out there, and the changes that the customers are going through when they at the end-to-end journey level. There are a number of things that we as an airline need to adapt to. Look, we're an airline with a very rich history of innovation. Right? We were the first people to put premium economy seats in the plane. We were the first people to do seat back entertainment. We were the first people to do lie flat bed. There's a number of things that we're absolutely known and loved for, which is great. I think at the moment, though, our biggest challenge is about how can we integrate the level of technology that's required to support a much more socially distanced travel experience and align that with our requirement and really what we're known for a very personal, high-touch service. So it's how can you blend those two things together, which I think is probably our biggest challenge. And as we kind of work through the recapitalization of the airline and look beyond that to 2021, when we when hopefully the situation around the travel global demand changes, then that's really when we'll be looking at what those solutions look like.
Right. Very interesting. And so back to the topic of coming into a new country. What are some of the challenges? I mean, when you're doing business in London, you're set up there, you've been there for a few years, not new, same most countries. When you're coming into a new country like London, what are some of the challenges with kind of just establishing yourself as like, we're here, we exist, we're here, come, open for business?
Yeah. I think it's a great question. So when we, I'm very lucky, right, to work for Virgin Atlantic. I absolutely recognize that. Virgin Atlantic is an amazing company. I talked about just a second ago about the rich history of innovation, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that the biggest thing that I've learned about working for Virgin in any culture is the reputation that sits alongside the Virgin element of the brand is so strong, it's so powerful. And that's, one of the reasons why we're very lucky to work for a company that people know, love, and almost feel a connection with before they even know what we do. It could be any kind of the Virgin brands. But coming here to Israel, the challenge has really been how do you bring a global brand like Virgin to Israel, where the Atlantic element of the Virgin isn't necessarily known. So people may know Virgin through the music stores, through the ballooning, through the Galactic, through through the mobile. There's a variety of different Virgin brands out there, right? That people will know, and they will know Richard, and they'll know his entrepreneurial spirit and what he's done and achieved and all of that. But actually, it's the nuance between, okay, that's great, but what about Virgin Atlantic? So what does Virgin Atlantic stand for? And allow that to resonate within the Israeli mindset. That's probably been the biggest challenge about bringing Virgin across here. So, with the Atlantic element isn't particularly well known. I think that if, even today, if I head down to AM, PM, will people know who Virgin Atlantic are that are, just knocking about the store? Well, maybe not. I often tell people where I work and have to explain, it's an airline, et cetera, That's on me. That's what we're here to do, to make sure people know what that is. But it's bringing the Virgin Atlantic brand to life through the Virgin Atlantic mechanism that really has been the biggest challenge over here.
Right. And so, all right, so but is that challenge specifically for Israel, or was that something that you run into other places also?
No, I think that Israel's been a particular challenge, as I say, because the Atlantic element just hasn't really existed over here in the past.
Okay.
If you were to go to different countries where Virgin Virgin Atlantic has a presence, or kind of looking at a bit closer to home, maybe that may still exist. But I think that when it comes down to Israel, that's where I've seen some of those kind of challenges. And I think if we're talking specifics about those challenges, one of the things that I was really came up against initially is the recruitment phase. So how do you bring people into work for Virgin Atlantic when Virgin Atlantic is such a core? We call it thinking red, right? And even when I say thinking red, it's very difficult to describe exactly what thinking red means. But we kind of understand it's almost the Virgin way of thinking, right? And you think about some of the buzzwords that may sit around that, like have high energy or creative thinking, thought leadership, pushing the boundaries, not being afraid. All of these sort of things are what comes to mind, right, when we think of thinking red. And the challenge that I had personally was building the team over here in Israel. So people may not have known what that particular element means. And, I went through a very, very, very long process of recruitment. I must have interviewed half of Israel. It felt like half of Israel. But it was, it was about 50 plus people we interviewed for 6 positions. Because for us, it's inherently important to recruit the right people with the right mindset, not necessarily for the right skills and having all the experience that comes with either selling or support functions or marketing, but it was absolutely having that right mindset that fits inside the Virgin Atlantic organization, which was very, very difficult to find. And, I'm very pleased that the team that we've assembled has been fantastic, but it wasn't an easy process to go through.
Yeah. And so I guess, things like hiring, how do you even begin that coming into a new country where you don't have an HR infrastructure and all that kind of to support you? Is that done through London, or do you have to land here and knock on a headhunter's door and say, get me people?
Yeah, so no, I referenced earlier APG Maman. They helped us with that kind of soft landing into the market. So they were able to kind of point us in the right direction. And that was a real help. So that kind of, helped us kind of scour down, narrow the market. But I think what we were looking for was something so specific. And in hindsight, and by the way, I wouldn't change this at all. I think for any company coming into a new market, you have to know what your company stands for. You have to know what works for your company and the belief system that sits around it. So all the values, all the objectives, what you hope to get, and you have to stick true to that. So I wouldn't change the way that we approach the recruitment process. But I would say that when we are operating in a new market, what we're looking for probably wasn't common for a lot of interviewees that we had through the door. It wasn't the questions that we were asking may not have been of particularly used to answering those sort of questions. Much more about how do you approach, how do you think, would you react, all of those sort of things. And as I say, it was really about just getting the right people with the right mindset.
Yeah. And so you the main thing to help you overcome them was really A, defining the company, and B, working with the local partner. So APG went beyond just marketing help, but actually went with helping you establish, set up, find people, hire, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a common practice for us here in Virgin Atlantic. We work with different partners in different markets where we have that requirement and that help us localize into a new market. I absolutely think there's a lot of value in that. Certainly, if you're starting up a brand new operation and at such a large scale, you absolutely need that kind of level of help. It definitely makes a big difference.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's a lot of whether it's hiring or marketing or sales, a lot of things. A lot of times it's better to hire a professional than to try to do it yourself if you're not experienced in that specific space.
Yeah.
So I agree. I get it. So let's talk a little bit about some of the ways, some of the things, activities that you actually did to come into the Israeli market. We touched on this, the startup, the Pitch to Rich startup competition. I saw a little bit. Unfortunately, I missed when it was live, but I heard about the Red Crew coming in and opening up a booth in the Shuk. Can you go into a little bit about how does the campaign like that even start? It's so out of the box and so not standard that how do you approach something like that?
Yeah, the approach is the interesting, I think, element to that question. So, effectively what we did is when we launched over here, we got Richard to open up a shop in Jaffa Shuk, and we got him to trade with a bunch of local Israelis and haggle around some products and flights. And it was a wonderful experience. I mean, look, Rich's background is absolutely about the deal, about securing the right price. A lot of the business lessons, I think that he loved doing that, by the way. He was all into that. So he loved it. He loved interacting with the Israelis, and he loved the Israeli people. I'm sorry?
Any chance of bringing him back for another round?
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to, absolutely. You get an even better deal. No, we loved, he loved being over here. But I think it's the approach that was, you know, in your question, that's really where I think is the interesting element, whereby when we approach Israel and actually how we approach all markets, whether it's the US or it's Hong Kong or it's Lagos or it's South Africa, wherever you're looking, we want to approach it differently, right? There's a big level of competition out there globally in the airline market. Right. We recognize that our experience is a little bit different, and we absolutely want to play on that. But it's the approach to the market, I think, that the customers want to resonate with, right? They don't want to be sold at in a certain way and then in a fairly normal way, and then have an amazing experience on board. You can't add those two things up. It doesn't kind of feel right. So actually, when we approach the market and we look at doing things around PR, our marketing, what we stand for, the phrasing that we use, the slight tongue-in-cheek. I don't know if you know that word. You know, it's a little bit different, right? It's the way that we do it. We absolutely want to be different, right? We look at what exists and then kind of go, okay, how can we do that differently? How can we actually bring a bit more life to that? How can we bring a bit more energy? How can we bring a bit more fun? Because that's the experience that you're going to get when you travel with Virgin. So that's the kind of experience that we want to get when we talk about Virgin Atlantic. And that's one example of something that we've done, which has been pretty fun and very enjoyable. But I guess from a business perspective, one of the challenges that we've got when we work in a market is that, you know, look, over here, I'm very fortunate that most people speak English, which is great. But we recognize that we've got to be sensitive to the local market, and where the local language is Hebrew, we absolutely need to communicate in Hebrew. But one of the challenges about Virgin and bringing a global brand to a market where you're not communicating in English, and you try and change some of those messages and the communications that we have, is how do you get the right tone? So, you know, you're talking about, we started talking about Richard Branson in a shoot being, you know, an incredible PR stunt, right? Yeah. But you filter that all the way through the marketing and comms plans that we have. And when we talk to our customers and when we talk to our passengers, how do we make sure that we communicate in the right tone for the market, but still be Virgin? And there's a lot of things that, you know, we have in our Virgin Atlantic HQ where they put out in English, and there's some good phrases and they make a lot of sense in English, but how do you translate that across? And we give a lot of thought to that, and we give a lot of thought to what we say and how we say it and the way that we say it, because it makes a difference for us. We're not just going to give you something bland and something that, you know, comes on an email and sits there and says, you know, we're going to do this and this is our schedule and blah, blah, blah. No, it has to be in a Virgin way. And I think that end to end, everything that we do here, the approach is always Virgin Atlantic. All
right. So do you have any other examples of kind of outside the box campaigns, you know, coming into new countries?
So I can give you, yeah, I can, but I would want to talk about a failure. Okay. So something that hasn't worked, and you know, be very honest with you. When we first started and when we first came over here, I'm talking back in May 2019. We obviously wanted to tell people we were coming over, right? We wanted to say to people, look, Virgin is coming, it's exciting, you're going to have red skies and a bar in the sky and, you know, great cabin crew, amazing experience, all of this sort of stuff. And we went for some above the line campaigns, and we did some great spots, absolutely wonderful media spots outside the IST I'll, and, you know, big billboard coverings and all of this sort of stuff. And It was an Israel-wide campaign. It wasn't just here in Tel Aviv. It was Jerusalem, it's Haifa, it's up in the north, it's down in the south, Ashdod way, and all of that sort of stuff. So, it's fairly wide-ranging. We put a lot into it. But the campaign that we used was what we had at the time. The assets at the time were very virgin, right? If I describe to you the billboards that we put out there, which were a lady behind a martini glass with a stretched out face, a dinosaur, a guy on a ladder, and just some really random things that were kind of, put together, all in front of airline windows, right?
Yeah.
On a pink background, and basically saying Virgin Atlantic is coming. I think most of Israel saw those adverts and kind of thought, what on earth is this? This makes no sense. Is this an airline? They're telling us they're an airline. I don't think that the people know that we're an airline. And, there was a lot of confusion around those billboards, because there's the lesson that we learn, I think, is that, in the UK, those adverts work because people know who Virgin Atlantic are. People know what Virgin Atlantic stand for. It's a bit of fun in the sky. It was related to our campaign at the time, which was a wonderful kind of take on differences. I'm sorry?
Your brand is established in the UK and people know what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, people know that. And people knew that, the dinosaur, what it meant is that it was a bit of fun, right? It's a bit of fun. It's a take on the different experience that you're going to get on board. But over here, I think that we needed to be a little bit more explicit around what it is that we do. And that was a really big lesson learned. And it was one thing that we've done that's out of the box, of course, because, it's a bizarre advert and for with no context, but it's a great advert with context. So that was a big lesson that we learned when starting up over here.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of some of the campaigns I've seen Virgin do over time, and they're hilarious. They're definitely a different experience. I remember the one that I saw where Richard Branson went on a flight as a flight attendant and started serving drinks, and that's very unexpected, to say the least.
Absolutely. Look, you can expect more from us. Expect the unexpected, really. With Virgin Atlantic, I think is definitely the takeaway.
Yeah, well, I think that's what draws people to it. Airlines have become such a formal, stuffy, cattle cars of just packing as many seats as possible and getting you from place to place as fast as possible. And it's lost the experience of it. And Virgin has that. You get on the plane and you can relax. You could enjoy it. It's different.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So now that you've been here for about a year, a little over a year, how would you describe Israel to your friends?
I think I talked earlier, right, about organized chaos.
Yeah.
I actually think that Israel is about 2 steps away from organized chaos. I don't think Israel's kind of got to organized chaos just yet, and they're approaching organized chaos. That's kind of how I describe Israel to my friends. It's living here is absolutely an experience. It has its wonderful parts. It has the food that I mentioned. It has the weather. The people are fantastic. I've never really felt so welcome really in a place as I have in Israel, and I'm very, very grateful for that, and I'm very grateful for the comments and support that friends, colleagues, partners in business often extend, and that's wonderful. It's an incredibly warm country to be a part of and to kind of come over to, but that organized chaos just resonates in everything that I do. You've got, I think there's some examples that I can certainly talk to that are bizarre, that I come across in my day-to-day life. I mean, the supermarket being one, vegetables on the left and everything else on the right was something that again, organized chaos, because you have it very organized. Everything's on the left is all the fruit and veg. Everything on the right is everything else. It's chaos because you try and move from one to the other. You can only do it in one way, and nobody tells you that. So, there's a very small example of organized chaos. I think the other one is filling up petrol in this country without an Israeli ID, because I obviously just have my passport. It's a very difficult experience, and often on a forecourt, you may find me talking to about 5 or 6 different people to help me fill up my car with petrol. Again, organized. There is a way to do it, but it's chaotic because there's no real set way to do it. And another example that I'll give is, we have air conditioning in the house, of course, because it's very hot over here, like everyone does. And in the winter, it was very cold. It was actually weirdly cold, and we needed to put the heating element on for the air conditioner. So it was broken. And so we called up the guy who owns the place, and he said, "Don't worry about it. I'll come around. I'll get you, fix your heating." And he basically came round with 2 camping stoves that you would put outside with a heating filament in it, and to fill the flat. Again, organised. He'd clearly done it, and he was very on time, but chaotic because we were kind of thinking, okay, this is definitely a fire hazard, but also I'm not entirely sure about how this is going to, heat the apartment. So, 3 real life examples about organised chaos. And when I think about living in Israel and my personal experiences, it's a great place to be. It really is. But every day is a new experience for us. It's amazing.
Yeah, it definitely is. Right. So back to kind of what we were talking about before. What advice would you have for kind of entrepreneurs that want to become part of this corporate scene in Israel? The international corporates in Israel. Startups that want to work with you, or in general with corporates, and how between the culture differences that you noticed, or the product, or how to approach it. What kind of tips do you have?
Yeah, so my advice would, I referenced earlier that Israelis are very direct, and that's a great thing. You know what you get, you know what is on offer, unless the second offer is on offer, then it's the second offer. But you know what you're going to get when you talk to an Israeli entrepreneur, because they're great, they're extremely proactive. But I think one of the things that I've experienced, and really my advice would be, is that is a way of working here in Israel, and it's great. Makes a lot of sense. But when you're working with an international company, you may have to just temper that enthusiasm and that desire a little bit, to just kind of really build that relationship with a foreign company over time. We as a multinational, very big organization, we have a huge decision-making process that sits around a lot of our policies, of our procurement, of our adaptation of technologies, of everything that we do, really. And I think that there's an expectation that from Israelis, when I talk to Israeli entrepreneurs, that there's a solution, it's great, let's implement it, it's going to be amazing, and it no doubt would be. There's some fantastic ideas out there, but some of the big piece of advice, I guess, that I would just give is that balance between having the direct, the very kind of confident approach in terms of what you are thinking about, what you're doing, etc., and just combine that with a little bit more balance with the thoughtful aspect around what exactly that company's motivations are, how quickly they can really adopt it, who you need to really speak to, who the person that you're speaking to needs to speak to get that done. That really would probably be my biggest piece of advice when we're looking at how we can further develop our relationship here in Israel from our perspective, but also for other English and other foreign multinationals that are in here in Israel.
Right. Thank you a lot. I think we're just about wrapped up. I guess one more question, since you mentioned it earlier, and this is completely off topic from what we were talking before. What do you think of this latest Israel, Dubai, or United Arab Emirates treaty and the travel now between the countries? I'm seeing a lot of excitement on the Israel side. People, I'm already getting ads to buy real estate in Dubai.
What, sorry?
I'm already getting ads to buy real estate in Dubai, and this was 3 days ago. What do you think that's? How do you think that's going to affect the travel between the two countries?
Yeah, look, I think for the travel, I'll steer away from the politics behind it, but certainly from my personal perspective, anything that brings peace to the region, if this is the solution that does that, then great. That's absolutely my comment on that. But I think when it comes to the travel aspect, look, I used to work for Etihad in Abu Dhabi. Know Emirates very, very well. Both of them are huge players in the UK market, and some of the biggest global players that exist today in the airline industry. They are phenomenal companies. If they come to Israel, it's going to be a game changer for the organization, for the organizational setup, the way that it works over here, for Israelis, bringing a very different product to the market. I think that they will open up everything going east, because that's effectively what they do. They hub everything over Abu Dhabi and Dubai. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for travel to some very unique places on a one-stop basis. Stop in Abu Dhabi, go to Bali, go to the Philippines, go to Japan, go to pretty much everywhere, go to Australia. There's a number of places that they service very, very well that you can hub over very easily. So if that does happen, I can only see it being a great thing for the Israeli consumer. And look, for us as Virgin Atlantic, we welcome all the competition out there, and we bring the competition. So we're up for it.
Right. Yeah, I'm seeing a ton of excitement from this new destination that Israelis now have. And people are dying to get out there already.
Yeah, there's a lot of pent up demand. So I just hope that it comes sooner rather than later.
Me too. All right. Thank you so much. I think this was extremely insightful. I think it was very helpful. I hope you enjoyed it yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, David. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for joining us, and looking forward to our next coffee.
Wonderful. Me too. Take it easy. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Bye.